You want to go ahead and start taking calls?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get to the calls.
We've got Luke from here in Austin. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
That's good. Well, our family goes to Austin Stone. Do you know this church?
What,
wow, we're getting some feedback. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been there yet, but I've been, and we've had another individual call who called himself Mark. Is everybody at Stone Church named after one of the Gospels, by the way?
I'm sorry, I can't really hear you.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if this is loud or not. Can you hear me now?
It's a little bit better.
Sure. I was just making a joke because Mark had called previously, and now Luke's calling, so I was wondering if everybody at Stone Church was named after.
Okay.
But no, I'm roughly familiar with it. One of the teaching pastors emailed me this week, and we're going to go to lunch at some point and talk about it. What's up?
Not very much. I just wanted to say that a lot of my friends have been watching the show, but some of them have been punished because they have really strict parents. You guys both went to church back when you were younger, right?
Yes.
I did, yeah.
Were your parents really strict about your beliefs?
No.
Mine were somewhat strict. I mean, it depends. You'd have to define it a little better for me to actually answer, but I mean, there were certain things, that were simply not tolerated.
Like, how did you guys treat other atheists?
Well, I don't think that I actually knew or met or interacted with any atheists when I was young.
Yeah, I didn't know any atheists when I was much younger.
I didn't recognize them as atheists. I never really ran up against them. I remember my mom talking about Madalyn Murray O'Hair and how she was this evil woman who was trying to destroy God's country. But generally, when we ran into people, they were, who weren't Christians, they were simply non-believers. The concept of an atheist meshing with this idea of non-belief just never really registered back then.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, one of the main beliefs we have is in hell. But at any point in time, did you ever have, like, a fear of it?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, like, if this happens to be true, like, why would you want to take the risk to go to hell?
You're not going to go Pascal's wager on us, are you?
See, the thing is, you're right. If it happens to be true, I suppose I'm taking a risk. And I'm also taking a risk against every other religion's claims and every other religion's hells. So by what right do you determine that the one you're avoiding is the correct one to avoid? And by the way, as a matter of principle, believing something simply to avoid a negative consequence is, in my opinion, it could be reasonable. I mean, if somebody's got a gun aimed at my head and wants me to say something to avoid being shot in the head, I'll say it. It's not a big deal, but I don't actually mean it. It's an avoidance thing. But what I find kind of repugnant is that there are, most Christians don't tend to look at this as, I believe this so I won't go to hell, although I think that's one factor. They actually revere this as if this is a loving God saving them from the hell that he evidently created. So not only do you have this problem where you haven't determined which hell to avoid or which heaven to aspire to, you haven't set up any criteria by that, but just the mere statement that one should attempt to avoid the possibility of a hell and therefore change the way they live the one and only life we know we're going to get is something that I find absolutely absurd and immoral.
Well, I hope you guys all find Jesus, because I don't want you guys to go to hell. And John 14:19 said, after a little while the longer will see me, but you will see me, because I live, you will live also.
Sure.
God bless, and thank you very much.
That's it?
That's
Really?
it? That's all you're going to do?
You're just going to call in and throw in the towel and quote a Bible verse? Why should I believe your Bible verse?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it hasn't been disproven, has it?
Oh, so you believe everything that hasn't been disproven? Why aren't you a Muslim?
How I was raised, I guess.
So
there you go.
So you believe everything that hasn't been disproven, and then you make exclusions for how you were raised. Do you think that's a reasonable way to go about finding out what's true and not true?
I guess it's not the best way.
Okay, so why do it?
Well, in general, I'm just afraid that I might go to hell,
So that's why you believe?
That's part of it, yeah.
Okay.
When you say that, it's kind of a complicated situation because you also said, I hope that you guys find Jesus so you avoid hell, etc. So you admit that you don't have a rational basis for your beliefs, and that's great. I'm glad that you're at least of the mind to say something like that. And you also admit that your primary reason for believing this is out of fear of a hell. And what I'd kind of like you to think about is, have you spent any time at all in fear that you might be sent to the Muslim hell or some other hell?
Well, I mean, I guess it's all kind of the same, I guess, but
it's not all kind of the same. They don't all have the same. They don't all have the same doctrines about what's going to happen after death, and they don't all have the same pathways to salvation. So if you take a look at all of the different religions, if your only reason for picking the one that you've got is that this is the way you were raised, why aren't you worried that you're wrong?
I guess that's a really good question. I'm definitely going to need to do some more research.
Okay. Well,
all right. Thank you very much.
Do it and call back anytime you want.
All right. Thanks a lot. God bless.
Sure. Thanks. I love that it has to end with a God bless as well. I don't know why it has to end with a God bless. I mean, it's not like I even sneezed or anything, but